Mace Windu's signature form of Vaapad took what was traditionally dark side lightsaber style of Form 7 and flipped it on its head, making it serve the light instead. Windu so far is the only one to have perfected Vaapad without turning to the dark side, making him a distinctly formidable fighter when facing opponents who possess great darkness within them. In many circles of scholars who study a galaxy far, far away, there is a great debate on the outcome of a duel between Windu and Dooku. Both of them are exceptionally talented duelists, but Count Dooku is on record of saying that the blade sequences of Vaapad are sloppy, indicating that at least for him, he believes himself to be more than a match for the style. This is a hot point of contention, as many believe that Windu would be able to take on Dooku on a level of power, while others believe that Dooku's superior skill and experience would win the day. While we here at the Archives may not be able to put a definitive end to this debate, we have a theory in which we believe that Vaapad and its style may actually not be as effective against Dooku as many believe. We know that we will need to defend this stance pretty well, so let's begin. Before we start though, we are always accepting suggestions for more topics to produce holocrons for, so if you'd like to get in with the Archives, be sure to subscribe and comment down below what kind of topics you want to see explored. Now, let's begin. First, we need to lay out all the facts about Vaapad and get a clear idea of how it works, and then compare it directly to Dooku. Vaapad is the secret Jedi variant of the 7th form of lightsaber combat, originally known as Juyo. In its base form, Form 7 is considered completely forbidden for any Jedi below the rank of Master to train in, and even then, most Masters refuse to learn its sequences because of what the form requires them to sacrifice. Like many forms, Juyo has a specific trait which makes it quite unique. This trait happens to be the fact that it requires the user to draw upon their aggressive feelings and give in to pure emotion. Juyo is wild, aggressive, and entirely unpredictable. In motion, Juyo is described as being like a river. Many seemingly unconnected moves come together to form a cohesive, deadly sequence. The form manifests as sharp and chaotic bursts of motion and is extremely difficult to fight against. It is said that a Juyo master can even break the impenetrable defenses of a Sarisu practitioner. Though Sidious was well versed in all 7 forms of lightsaber combat, we do know that he particularly preferred Form 7 due to how nicely it complements wielders of the darkness. Sidious is even known to have mentioned this specifically as a Sith form and not for the Jedi to use. Juyo is one form that cannot be simply studied, it has to be experienced and accepted. Even a Jedi Master once said that one can practice the sequences of Juyo, but will never become a master of the form until they give themselves over to the excitement and passion, 2 things which actively go against the very Jedi code. But this is where the brilliance of Vaapad begins. Vaapad is in effect the controlled and refined version of Juyo. With that said though, a lot more complicated. Rather than using his own passion, Windu developed a way to keep it locked away in a brewing storm. Using this, he also takes in his opponent's passion and darkness and allows it to conduct itself through him like a lightning rod before letting it fountain back against his opponent, essentially forcing them to duel their own energy. Like how a lightsaber reflects blaster fire, so too does Vaapad reflect the dark using the light like a mirror. With that said though, the form is incredibly dangerous, as using one's passion to actually take darkness within themselves is incredibly deadly. It requires one step just close enough to the void without falling in. Unfortunately, only Mace Windu has ever succeeded in perfecting this mindset, and so he is the only one that used Vaapad that never fell to the dark side. The co-developer of Vaapad and another practitioner of the form Sora Bulk would ultimately come to its dark side effects. In the end, Sora Bulk's Vaapad was referred to by Mace Windu as only Juyo. In effect, a true Vaapad user was channeling his opponent's own dark side powers against them. The stronger someone is in the dark, and the less refined, the stronger Vaapad will be. This is why we see Sidious snarling and growling, frustrated while fighting Windu. He is so powerful in the dark side that Vaapad just keeps growing in scale alongside his own massive power. It's the first time that all of Sidious's strength is culminated against him, and it was extremely effective. So now, why would Vaapad not work against someone like Darth Tyrannus or Dooku? Isn't Dooku sufficiently strong enough in the dark side? Well, the answer is yes and no. Dooku is a fully fledged Sith Lord after only a short time experiencing the dark side, since of course he had formal training as a Jedi and formal training within the Force. From the moment he left the Order to when he died, Dooku was a Sith and using the dark side for a total of more than 13 years, more than enough to become steeped in the dark side well. By the time Yoda faced him on Geonosis, which is likely around the time that Windu would have faced Dooku, had he gotten the chance, Darth Tyrannus was already adept in using Force lightning, and he was able to contend with Yoda in a feat of a lightsaber. But there's a bit of a problem here, as it seems almost as if Dooku is holding back. Or rather, he isn't being as powerful as he could be. This is most certainly not to say that Dooku isn't powerful. He was even commended for his increased power by Yoda. With that said though, Dooku is no Sidious. Let's compare Force lightning directly when talking about the differences between Dooku and Sidious. We saw on Geonosis that Yoda was able to absorb Dooku's Force lightning using Terminus, as well as Obi-Wan holding up his lightsaber and having the Force lightning absorbed by the blade. Let's directly compare this to Sidious. Sidious is able to nearly overpower Yoda while Yoda is using Terminus, forcing the Grandmaster to use both hands. And later, when he is firing his Force lightning at Windu is being pushed back actively, struggling at the insane dark power that Sidious wields. Some may say that this is because Sidious is known to be naturally gifted in Force lightning. However, Dooku is also stated to be naturally gifted. In canon, there are now many sources that explore Dooku's early years. In fact, Dooku even used Force lightning as a Jedi Padawan, something that should not have been possible, even using it several times as a Jedi Master, at one point wielding Force lightning to save a young Qui-Gon's life. There's no question about their talents, but still, others will say that Sidious is more experienced than Dooku, having trained in the dark side for far longer. Well, consider this. In Attack of the Clones, Sidious is 54 years old and has been training in the dark side since he was around 20, around double the time that Dooku had trained in the dark side. However, Sidious became a Sith and began training in the dark side of the Force from 20, having zero prior experience. Dooku trained in the Force his entire life. Even with the time differences in dark side training, Dooku still should have been able to pick up on it more quickly than even his master. All of this goes to say that Dooku has not given himself over to the powers of the dark side on the same level of Sidious. With that said, that's not a knock against Dooku. It's just the pure fact that essentially no one else has ever risen to the dark side power that Sidious has. He is the ultimate. But this is why Vaapad would be much weaker against Dooku. It's true that he's cruel and full of anger, but although his intentions have been twisted, he still holds fast to his ideals. He avoided and almost refused to directly kill any Jedi for almost his entire time as a Sith. This goes to show that while he may use the dark side for the power it grants, he doesn't quite subscribe to the Sith ideology in all of its entirety. Dooku does not go as far into the darkness as he could. This is something that is a generally accepted consensus, as we have done a holocron all about the characterization of Dooku, where we explored all of his motives and his psychology. Dooku brought with him many Jedi ideals when in combat, such as the way he suppressed his passion in fights with cold intent. He is measured, withheld, and calculated. Dooku maintains being the finest duelist because he uses his Jedi ideals of combat, which is to remain calm, cleared, and focused. Luke Skywalker has even mentioned that he believes that Jedi are better duelists because of this. So how exactly would this affect Vaapad? If Dooku is calm in battle and doesn't let his passion run rampant, then he also hasn't fully given himself over to the dark side. But now we ask you, what power is being given over to Vaapad to use? If there isn't a sufficient amount of darkness being given over to Windu to be conducted back towards Dooku, then that means Windu is left without the necessary momentum he needs to use Vaapad perfectly. There is implied reasoning that states that Vaapad's power scales directly in comparison to the amount of darkness within the opponent. We aren't saying that Vaapad wouldn't be effective against Dooku at all. We're just saying that it wouldn't be nearly as effective as it would have been against someone like Sidious. The power and momentum just won't be enough, which leaves only the skill of the blade, Windu to Dooku. That debate though, I will leave up to you. All we will say is, once again, Dooku is on record mentioning that he believes Vaapad is sloppy, and as a master of the blade, with many years of experience, we can validly say that his opinions can be taken as an expert evaluation. With that said though, Dooku has underestimated opponents before and paid the price. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on how Vaapad would affect Dooku? And our analysis on the subject? As always, Acolytes, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.